The biggest mistake you could make right now is assuming your life will change when the year changes. Time doesn't reset identities. Attention does. And the reason the next 6 weeks matter so much isn't because of what you'll do. It's because of what will finally stop pulling you outward. When focus collapses inward for long enough, reality has no choice but to reorganize around you. That's the window you're entering now. Most people think transformation happens when the calendar changes. A new year, a new goal, a new plan. But real shifts don't begin when time moves forward. They begin when attention stops leaking outward. And that's why the next 6 weeks matter so much, more than anything you could plan for the next 6 months. Nothing external needs to change yet. No drastic action, no reinvention. What matters now is something far less dramatic and far more powerful. Where your focus goes when no one is watching. Where your energy rests when there's nothing urgent demanding it. That's the signal your system is sending into the quantum field every single day. Manifestation doesn't respond to efforts spread across time. It responds to compression. Short windows where identity stabilizes instead of oscillating. Periods where you stop reacting to the world and allow the internal environment to recalibrate. That's what these 6 weeks are about. Right now, most people are leaking energy into anticipation, waiting for 2026, imagining how different things will be. But waiting is still orientation toward the future, and orientation toward the future keeps identity unresolved. The field can't reorganize around a signal that keeps pointing somewhere else. Focusing on yourself for 6 weeks doesn't mean becoming selfish or disconnected. It means becoming coherent. It means removing the constant feedback loops that keep telling you who you should be, what you should want, and how fast things should happen. When those loops quiet down, something interesting occurs. The system begins to reset itself naturally. From a neurological perspective, sustained focus inward changes baseline states. Attention withdrawal reduces cognitive noise. Emotional regulation improves. The brain stops running unnecessary simulations about future outcomes. And when the brain stops predicting from anxiety or lack, behavior changes without force. Spiritually, this has always been known as preparation. Not preparation through discipline, but preparation through subtraction, removing what doesn't belong to the next version of you, letting the identity that carried you this far loosen its grip. These 6 weeks are not about becoming someone new. They're about creating enough internal silence for the next version of you to surface. And silence isn't emptiness. Silence is information without distortion. This is why the quantum field responds more strongly during periods of inward focus. Not because you're manifesting harder, but because the signal becomes clean. When attention isn't scattered across comparison, urgency, and constant stimulation, coherence increases automatically. And coherence is what reality organizes around. What's important to understand is that this isn't a challenge. It's not about willpower or forcing habits. It's about giving your system a break from being pulled in 10 directions at once. When focus collapses inward, identity consolidates. And when identity consolidates, the future stops feeling distant. This is the mistake most people make. They try to design the future before stabilizing the self that will live in it. They plan outcomes instead of preparing identity. But identity always arrives first. Reality follows later. That's why people who experience real breakthroughs often say, "I changed before anything changed." They didn't know it at the time, but they entered a compression window, a period where the old identity lost relevance and the new one hadn't fully taken over yet. That's exactly where these 6 weeks place you. You're not late, you're not behind, you're not missing anything. You're standing at the only point where real preparation happens, before results, before clarity, before proof. The next step isn't action, it's removing noise. And that's where this process truly begins. The first 2 weeks are not about building anything new. They're about stopping what no longer needs to run before a new identity can stabilize. The old one has to lose relevance,
and relevance is maintained through attention, not effort, not belief, attention. These weeks are where the detox begins, and not of habits alone, disters, but of identity signals. Every time you react automatically, every time you seek validation, every time you replay the same emotional loops, you're feeding an outdated version of yourself. The goal here isn't discipline, it's interruption. This phase often feels quieter than expected. There's no dramatic urge to change everything. Instead, you notice a subtle disinterest in things that used to pull you in. Conversations feel repetitive, content feels loud, certain obligations feel unnecessary. That's not boredom, that's disengagement, and disengagement is the nervous system reclaiming energy. From a neurological perspective, this is what happens when constant stimulation is reduced. Dopamine baselines begin to normalize. The brain stops seeking micro-rewards from novelty, drama, or external approval. When that happens, attention naturally turns inward, not because you force it, but because there's nowhere else it urgently needs to go. Spiritually, this is subtraction. You're not becoming less, you're becoming less fragmented. Every reaction you don't feed weakens an old loop. Every moment you don't explain yourself loosens an old identity. Silence becomes functional, not empty, but restorative. During these 2 weeks, the most important shift isn't behavioral, it's perceptual. You start noticing how much energy was being spent maintaining narratives. Narratives about who you are, where you should be, how fast things should move. When those narratives quiet down, something else becomes audible, your actual internal state. This is also where resistance shows up, not as temptation, but as restlessness. The urge to check, scroll, engage, or distract yourself. That urge isn't desire, it's withdrawal. You're stepping away from external feedback loops that used to regulate your sense of self. Of course, the system reacts. That reaction is part of the detox. The mistake here would be to fight the restlessness. Fighting creates friction. Instead, you observe it. You let it pass without feeding it. And each time you do, the loop weakens. The system learns that silence is safe, that nothing collapses when attention isn't constantly projected outward. These weeks are also when emotional neutrality begins to emerge. Not joy, not sadness, neutrality. And neutrality is powerful because it means you're no longer negotiating with reality. You're not trying to improve it or escape it. You're simply present within it. This presence does something important to the quantum signal you emit. It removes contradiction. When you're no longer simultaneously wanting, fearing, comparing, and anticipating, the field receives a clearer instruction, not about what you want, but about who you are no longer being. This is why results don't appear yet in this phase, and they're not supposed to. This is preparation, not payoff. You're clearing the interference that would distort what comes next. By the end of these 2 weeks, you may notice something unexpected. Desire has softened. You still want things, but they don't feel urgent. They don't define you. And that softening is not loss, it's maturity of signal. You're no longer manifesting from hunger. You're manifesting from presence. And presence doesn't beg, it doesn't chase, it doesn't wait anxiously, it holds. Weeks 3 and 4 are where the new self stops being an idea and starts becoming familiar. Not through affirmations, not through visualization, through repetition without force, through small, quiet decisions that confirm to your nervous system, this is how I operate. At this stage, manifestation is no longer about imagining outcomes, it's about inhabiting states. The way you respond to situations, the pace at which you move, the standards you keep without explaining them, these are signals, and they are far louder than words spoken in meditation. From a neurological perspective, this is pattern consolidation. The brain begins reinforcing new pathways only when behavior aligns with internal state. Consistently, not perfectly, consistently. You're teaching your system what normal feels like now, and whatever feels normal becomes the baseline the field responds to. Spiritually, this is embodiment. You're no longer trying to convince yourself you've changed. You're acting from a place where change no longer needs commentary. You don't announce it, you don't justify it, you simply live from it. This is where many people get impatient. They feel calmer, clearer, more grounded, and then wonder why reality hasn't dramatically shifted yet. But dramatic shifts come after stabilization, not during it. The field waits for consistency before it reorganizes. Intensity doesn't impress it, reliability does. During these weeks, you may notice that certain choices feel obvious. You say no without guilt. You pause before reacting. You don't chase clarity. You let it emerge. This isn't discipline. It's alignment becoming automatic. There's also a quiet confidence that begins to surface here. Not excitement, not certainty, just a lack of internal debate.